Hello, all you magical people. Welcome to Out of This World. This is your host, Princess Programming, and I'm here with Ariel. How are you today?
Hello, I journeyed from under the sea to meet with you
Oh,
today.
good.
I'm the human version of Ariel today.
Did you make your Faustian bargain with the Black Witch?
Love her.
Yeah.
We had a great time. We always do.
I heard that I was listening to some stories about the actual fairy tales that the Disney versions are adapted from, and they're way more gory and disturbing. And Ariel, the Little Mermaid, was one of the worst ones. The story, she did have to sell her soul to get feet. And then part of the deal was that whenever she walked, it would feel like she was walking on shards of glass. And then
Oh,
he went and married another princess, anyways. And Ariel had to die to save him and all this crazy stuff. And then I heard about Sleeping Beauty, and the story was pretty much the same, except for she was not awakened by the kiss. She was still asleep after the prince kissed her and remained asleep. And the prince actually made a baby with her while she was sleeping. And she gave birth to twins. And
while she's sleeping.
yes, and the twins were trying to find the nipples, and they sucked on her finger and it sucked out the splinter that made her sleepy, and that's what awakened her, not true love's kiss. So
Where the hell did you find these stories? Like what? Where?
YouTube, I don't know.
Whoa.
Just getting ready, listening to the true stories of fairy tales.
Just the daily intake of fairy tale
Yeah.
folklore. I do have two stories about Ariel. It was the first movie I remember really seeing at the movie theater when I was a little girl.
Hmm.
Uh, and I loved it because it was like this magical movie experience. So I've always kind of really liked Ariel. But also, when I was in my early 20s, I went to a drag show and I I was there with friends, and this was way back in the day. And a friend of mine, I'd never seen anything like this before. I was pretty sheltered growing up, and anyway, a drag queen came out dressed as Ursula, and she took one of her tentacles and like slapped me with her tentacle, and I was like, "What is happening? Like, why did he just do that?" And everybody thought it was funny, but like deeply ingrained memory.
Now you
So
are enchanted with Ursula slap energy.
Ursula slash drag energy for sure.
I
Yeah.
always thought Ursula's makeup kind of looked like that. Did
Like dragish.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That's a good, yeah. Well, there you go.
Thank you for coming to join us from the fathoms of the deep
You're
and your watery
welcome.
abode.
I have Prince Eric's shirt on too.
Oh, nice, nice.
Yeah. This reminds me of that Seinfeld episode with like pirate shirt.
The puffy shirt. Yep,
Yeah, the puppy. Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Well, tonight we are going to talk about my favorite thing to hate on, which is Disney. And I don't know anybody else who has been following this as closely and as detailed as I have. I have so much content that this is probably not going to fit in one show. It's probably going to be like a 2 or 3 part series of Disney's dark secrets, because they their stock is plummeting right now because of a leaked meeting that they had, where they are talking about they want a minimum of 50% of the characters to be LGBTQ. And I printed
Actually,
out some.
I actually have that quote.
Uh huh.
Um, They said it's going to be many, many, many LGBTQIA characters in our stories. I think it's funny they left the plus off at the end,
What
and
does IA mean?
I don't even know what the plus means. Like plus, like is it like inclusion of anything else that is created?
Uh-huh.
Maybe.
I don't know. I am so behind, I can't even keep up with my little acronyms. So I'm kind of nervous right now just because of the subject matter. And it's super dark and it's really hard for people to wrap their head around. And I'm going to try and deliver it in a way that's palpable. And Kristen looks so cute and she's going to bring what she learned too. So I printed off. Okay, so when you go in and you put in Disney scandal, right? Every year pops up. So there's been so many scandals revolving around predators at the theme parks, not just working for Disney in the animation, but let's see, going back to 2014, theme park employees caught in sex stings and child POR arrests. Charges include possession of that and trying to meet minors for sex. This one was about a guy named King Solver who tried to meet a little girl who was actually there. These are all like sting operations, which it's really valuable, I guess, what they're doing, but no news ever like covers these things. So this one was, let's see, 17 people in 2020 were arrested, including 2 Disney World employees, a pharmacist. This was called Operation Guardians of Innocence 5. And it resulted in a total of 1,400 felonies filed against 17 suspects. So that was 2020. 2021, law enforcement Operation Child Protector arrested more than a dozen suspects preying on children online. Disney employees. Let's see. And then the most recent one, Disney employees and former judge among 108 arrested in human trafficking sting. So you can find all of these. It's called Operation March Sadness 2. So there have been at least 5 Operation Guardians of Innocence, Operation Child Protector, and Operation March Sadness. So, and it's not just Disneyland. It's like Universal Studios and SeaWorld, and that whole place is like a hotbed of creepers.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I mean, if you're interested in being with a kid, you know, you're going to go, it's like, you're going to go be where the kids are. And, you know, it was, I think we have the same articles printed out, but one of the ones that, you know, there's so many different scenarios that are laid out in this article, but there was one in particular of like an older man chasing a younger boy, and he admitted to it because it was in the sting operation, and he literally said he was trying to fulfill a fantasy. It's just like, there's so much about Disney World and Disneyland that because you're the expert here, I'm like, just literally been like sticking my toe into a lot of the information around it this past week. And it's just a place for people to be delusional and not face reality at all. And we'll get into this later, but like I see that correlation happening in a lot of places in the world because the world is getting so heavy and dark. But man, Disney is a hotbed for it.
Well, you had mentioned something on our last show. You said there is a lot of people online talking about Disney adults, right? And what is that power that it holds over people that it lasts a lifetime? And what you are witnessing is probably, in my opinion, one of, well, the most sophisticated forms of mind control that has ever been created. And
Yeah.
so,
I was watching a documentary on Prime last night, and it was kind of like a B rated type of documentary, but it was called The Dark Side of Disney. And it starts out with this filmmaker interviewing his mom because his mom was one of these older women, literally like, I think she was like mid 50s, like creeping up on 60s, that has season passes, took her son every year. That's why the son made the documentary, because he was like, I can't stand Disney and I want to expose all this stuff that I've learned about it. But he interviews his mom, and his mom is just like, mentally, you would think she's still probably like 16, 17, like, and obsessed with Disney.
that makes a lot of sense. And so I wanted to start out with where we are today, and that was the scandal about the leaked meeting and then the 108 people arrested this week. And it's been on INFOWARS. Lots of details. They've been covering that all week. So that's where we are. And now I wanted to go back to the beginning, and with the birth of the man himself, Walt Disney, and how he came to work with the FBI and the CIA, and how Disney, the corporation, is a military industrial complex machine that is a well-oiled machine. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. There's a reason why they have acquired pretty much all of the media, Fox, Marvel, Star Wars, all of that can get rolled into Disney. And then I did have a picture in my book, but then this one was updated because I wrote this book, I started writing it in 2010. And then that was way before the whole Star Wars Fox mergers and stuff like that. So here's another visual representation of all of the companies that Disney owns,
Wow.
partner companies,
Yeah,
and the
that's
that are under the
super
umbrella,
interesting.
right?
Yeah.
Because it's not just cartoons, it's theme parks, it's cruise lines, it's entire towns. There's a town called Celebration, Florida. That is a
Also
Disney,
known as the bubble.
yeah, the Disney town. Um, and so when I was writing this, it was about 4 or 5 years after Hannah Montana came out. And this is where I started noticing like how prolific Disney products and ideas were. And let's see, the first kind of clue I ever got about, well, going back to childhood, okay, so when you grow up in like a conservative Christian household, they're very sensitive about things like witchcraft and cartoons. And so Disney was always kind of like on my radar as, you know, maybe there's not such great things going on here. I wasn't allowed to watch Fantasia. I wasn't allowed to watch Black Cauldron. I was not allowed to watch things that glorify the occult or witches or magic or anything like that. So I was kind of had it in the back of my mind, like, okay, Disney, there's something weird going on there. And then when I moved to Austin and we were working together on those kinds of things, I learned about, you know, trauma-based mind control and how lots of kids that are having breakdowns were actually Mouseketeers,
Yeah.
and those classic ones. And then when I was living in Austin, I noticed this face everywhere I would go. This face is staring at me. Every store, every section, every food, every aisle, Home Depot, AutoZone. It wasn't just toy stores. It was Hannah Montana on everything. Any kind of product you could need or ever want had a Hannah Montana theme to it. You would walk down the aisles at Target or Walmart, and all of the stuff is Hannah Montana. Do you remember that era?
I do.
You do.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned the Mouseketeers, because that, when I was growing up, I was like, how, like Justin Timberlake, Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, like, and then it was like that next generation was the Hannah Montana generation. And it was like all linked to Disney.
Hmm.
But yeah, I do remember that.
And that's kind of when I like honed in on what is happening to little girls and culture with Hannah Montana. And now you see, as she's grown up, what they want the girls to emulate, right? So I was digging through all of my Disney books, and to write my first weird stuff, I read all of these about the life of Walt Disney. So I'm just gonna like pass them through. That one. Disney the Mouse betrayed, greed, corruption, and children at risk.
Ooh.
Let's get a thumbnail going. Okay. Princess Recovery, about all of the princess stuff. Because right after Hannah Montana, that's when things started to go pink and blue. And that's what I called princess warrior programming back then. It's moved into a different phase now. But in the 2000s, it was all about princesses and soldiers,
Okay.
right? Let's see, what's this? Disney's World, a biography. Good Girls and Wicked Witches. This was interesting how they portray women actually in Disney media
Oh, yeah.
and how
Yeah.
unfair it is.
So, Tinder Swindler.
Uh-huh.
Uh, there's a scene in it where she literally is like, I'm searching for my prince because I watched Beauty and the Beast. And that like had programmed her to think that's what I want out of a relationship with a man.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, yeah, like it really is programmed. And
And a lot of people are starting to criticize this. Like Ariel sold her talent to be close to a man that doesn't even notice her.
yeah,
And she's the one that has to go prove her worth and gain her soul back by snagging this prince, right? And then I just read something about Brigham Young University did a study about Disney movies and elderly villains. Why are villains always portrayed as like 55 and older? So out of 93 Disney movies that they watched, 42% had characters that reinforced negative stereotypes about the elderly.
okay, yeah. Never
So,
thought about that, but
yeah,
yeah.
not good values for women or old people. Cinderella Ate My Daughter. I read that one.
I bet that was good.
Mouse Tales, behind the scenes at Disneyland. So don't think that I have not done my homework about this. I've got Orlando for Dummies at Walt Disney World,
Nice.
Walt Disney, an American Original. And I have another
Girl.
Disney, his life and pictures.
She's here. She's already being.
Oh, Gigi.
Okay. Say hi.
This one's a weird. Will Eisner, A Spirited Life. And then I found these two in hiding, and this is what we're going to cover in the next part. We're going to talk about theme parks specifically.
That'll be fun.
Yeah. But in this little magazine, it's kind of like a Inquire Weird Stuff magazine. Fate magazine from looks like the 80s. But this is all about, this issue is about how Walt Disney worked with Stanford Research Institute
Ooh.
to build Disneyland on specific ley lines. So
Ooh.
cult stuff happening in that. Then the one that you read and I've read, Hollywood's Dark Prince. Yes. So let's get into your notes about Hollywood's Dark Prince, and I will supplement it with what I have, because a lot of stuff from that went into here, and especially how he began working with the FBI.
Yeah. So in this book, you know, if you don't know anything about Walt Disney, you kind of learn the background story. He was where he was born in Chicago, he had one sister. I think that mostly what I learned out of this book was um, the charges against him as being extreme right winged politically. And also, he was known as a snitch. He was, he's a snitch, man.
Mm-hmm.
Needing stitches. And so,
Stitches get stitches.
which that kind of surprised me because it was like he's such a man of power, within, what he's doing. But then also, I think this production company and, what he had created over here, like he felt his position within the political sphere was equally as important. So that was really interesting to me. And I know you have got like, well, let me tell you about that. But this is like just what I retained out of the book. And then, that he was a FBI informer for 26 years. And he was considered the mole in Hollywood. Like what? Like I had no idea. And then he also was kind of known to be a like not very nice to the women. Like he just didn't want to promote women to certain levels within the company. So like even if you were one of the best animators or, he'd have these relationships and he pretty much grew up around women and female figures and he did get married, but he also had a weird love life. Like the first girl of interest ran off while he was in France and got married behind his back. And so then he fell in love with his wife, Lillian. And that's her name, right? Lillian. And, it seemed to me like they had there was rumors that never leaked that he ended up cheating on her and having an affair. And then she was cheating on him with his brother. And none of this ever got leaked to the media. Of course, they would cover that up. But yeah, just a lot. He was a complicated figure who was out there promoting integrity and ethics and goodness and the magical type of thinking in the world. And this is the utopia and the perfection of like my mind. But then in reality, he was drinking a lot and on sleeping pills and supposedly having an affair on his wife and his wife's having an affair on him. And yeah, just kind of craziness all around.
Well, he said that Walt Disney was a character that he played. So
That would make
what you
sense.
see,
Yeah.
the wholesome, family-loving, carousel ice cream man that is portrayed is not the real Walt.
Okay.
And he actually, his dad was a preacher. And it's so interesting that a lot of these Satanists and people that like go to the dark side, their family was super religious. So there's something about that like puritanical fire and brimstone upbringing that just makes them.
I've thought about that a lot.
Mhm.
I think that from a young age, you've been exposed to a way of thinking in other dimensions, or like, that, when you're brought up that way, like there's other things that exist that you can't see that are forces beyond you. And I think, when you're raised in that type of strict upbringing in Christianity, you're always searching for that way of thinking. And then what gets presented is the occult or the darkness. And you're like, oh, this is familiar. And then this is actually how it's supposed to be.
Mhm.
I don't know. That's a theory.
It seems like his dad was kind of like the dad from Footloose. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like very outspoken about values, but then he would beat them and he'd force them to work. He would, you know, make their life very hard. But at the other side of his mouth, he would just always talk about the Bible and things like that.
Mm.
But he was also like a hypocrite because he liked to go to bars, he liked women, he liked whiskey and gambling. So this kind of put a schism in Disney, Walt, his little brain,
Yeah.
that my dad is two people. So thus begins the split personality of his early life. So he was born in 1901, allegedly, but he wanted to join the army for World War One, but they couldn't produce a birth certificate. So there's this whole scandal about his age and about his mother might not have been his real mother because there was a maid or like a housekeeper, I think. Yeah, we'll get to that part in a second. So in 1890, his dad went to California. And then when he came back, there was a Walter Disney born in 1891. So they could have. Yes. So his dad hired her as a housekeeper. And that was probably his mom because he doesn't look anything like his parent, his mom. He looks more like the Spanish lady that
Oh,
was the
wow.
housekeeper,
Okay.
right?
Ah.
So he had this in the back of his mind. Let's see. And
Lots of complications.
yeah, this is actually what the FBI had over him after he was established. They found something. Here's the blacked out documents about his birth mother.
Ooh.
So he was always like kind of searching for this. And they said, we'll help you look for her and help you figure out what actually happened if you become a special agent in charge in 1954. But what's interesting about that by itself is that right after Pearl Harbor happened, like literally the day after, the Army showed up at their studios in Burbank at Walt Disney Studios and commandeered the entire production studio and said, this is ours. And you are so popular, you're going to start making propaganda films for us. And those are some of the videos that you watched. Did you watch like Chicken Little and
I
those?
watched all of them. Those
Okay,
were fascinating.
let's talk about those for a second.
Like, holy moly. And it's funny because I grew up watching, I remember like watching Chicken Little as a kid and then watching it like with this set of eyes and then this political landscape. And knowing what I know now, I'm like, there's so much psychology in it and like just the straight up quotes of how to to tell people how to conquer other people. It's just
Yep.
right in there.
Yes. So Chicken Little is a story about the sly fox using psychology to get the chickens to march right into his mouth, basically.
Yeah, the cave.
Yeah, the cave. And he uses all of these psychological techniques. And I have a picture. Like he's reading, the sly fox is reading a book on psychology. Can you see that?
Yeah.
And he's explaining how you control people. And he says, if you tell them a lie, don't tell a little one, tell a big one. Do you remember that?
I do. Yeah.
This is straight from Mein Kampf.
Wow.
And
That's
Hitler said
yeah.
that.
Who else said that?
Hitler said that.
Oh, yeah.
He says, in the big lie, there is always a certain force of credibility because the broad masses of a nation are always more easily corrupted in the deeper strata of their emotional nature than consciously or voluntarily. And thus, in the primitive simplicity of their minds, they more readily fall victim to the big lie than the small lie, since they themselves often tell small lies in little matters would be ashamed to resort to large-scale falsehoods. So there's the first psychological trick of the fox.
Maybe it's the second one, but I love this. okay, I'm jumping ahead, but like finding like the dumbest amongst the masses and playing to their um egoic nature.
Yes.
Whoa.
Yes. So the fox decides to play this psychological operation on Chicken Little, and
Hmm.
he throws this like thing over the fence and it hits the Chicken Little in the head. I think it's a pentagram on a plank of wood. And
But he picks Chicken Little because he is, of all the chickens or all the bird species, he's considered to the fox the dumbest or the,
right.
the most
And
gullible.
mhm. And he doesn't have respect from the other chickens either. Chicken Little.
Hmm.
So he throws this thing over the fence and it hits Chicken Little in the head. And Chicken Little's like, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. And everyone's like, the sky's not falling. Um, and then he uses one of his techniques. It says, undermine the faith of the masses in their leaders. So the fox infiltrates the different social groups, spreading rumors through the fence. He provokes the chickens to fight amongst themselves. And they demote the rooster, who's like the voice of reason.
Hmm.
He's cocky. They call him Cocky Locky.
Yeah.
um, so he undermines all of the chickens' like faith in their rooster. And then it says, by the use of flattery, insignificant people can be made to look upon themselves as born leaders. So the
This
fox,
was a really good aspect to this.
so he convinces the Chicken Little that it's his turn now that Cocky Locky is out. So Chicken Little is now the leader. And Chicken Little gets everybody to give up their safety in the chicken coop and leave and go straight to where the fox is telling them to go.
Yep.
I thought that was pretty
And
profound.
I loved at the end, it's, all the chickens run in the cave, and then the narrator says, don't worry, the story turns out okay in the end. And then they cut to the screen and it's the fox like licking the bones. And he was like, no, actually, it ends this way. And it's
Yeah,
like all the chickens died and he ate all of them. And
yeah.
it's such a gaslighting type of
It is
technique at the
totally is.
very end. It's
Yes.
like, don't worry, we wouldn't end it on such a tragic note. And then it's like, bam, but actually we are. And they all died.
It's a good ending for the fox, is what they mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is all part of like this era of propaganda films right into World War II. I call this Disney's World of Warcraft, and there is a DVD series that you can get called Disney on the Front Lines, and it actually has all of the propaganda cartoons and the cartoons that like instructional things that they would make for the armies to watch only. Don't get syphilis and things like that. But they showed a shot of Walt Disney drawing the mouse ears, and it was just like a quick blip. But I had to pause it and go back and capture the screenshot because look what he's doing. He's drawing
Oh.
the Mickey Mouse ears inside of a pentagram.
I see that. Wow.
So even back then, they are making shapes and sigils and symbols on magical ways of thinking, right?
Yeah.
So, Operation Paperclip. Okay, so did you watch the one about Donald pays his taxes?
That was bananas. Yeah. So I didn't realize this at the time, but like that was when they proposed income tax. And so it never existed before. And so they did this propaganda cartoon saying like, you are a good American and you are doing, we can't go to war and we can't sustain war unless you hurry up and you pay us this certain amount of money that you owe.
Mm-hmm.
And it was supposed to end, but it never ended.
That cartoon is called The New Spirit, which is kind of creepy, and it's 1942.
I
And
thought that same thing too, how it was
yeah,
like the new spirit has
right.
descended on America.
because it was not a law yet that you had to do this. But since everybody wants to pull together for the war, taxes to beat the axes was the
Yeah.
motto. And so Donald rushes his like tax payment to Washington, D.C., and then we discover like where his tax revenues go to. And it's like a war machine, but how do you put this? It's not SE-actualized, but it's like war, 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 like guns,
Yeah.
ammo, bombs.
Bombs. Yeah.
Yeah. Anti-tank guns, guns of all kinds. And he's like,
Yeah,
God,
they really did present it in like a lustful, like
trust, yes,
way of
that's it.
like see what you can be involved in and like if you aren't, then you're missing out and like see how like I don't know. It was you're absolutely right. It was like this presentation of like
He literally says guns, 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 like, right?
it's weird.
Yeah.
It's really, really weird. Apparently that's a meme, and I didn't like that guns, guns, guns thing.
Hmm.
People have like clipped that out, and because they make fun of it because it's just like so crazy. I don't know the just over the top.
It is over the top. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm.
So Donald's paying his taxes. Minnie Mouse is saving her bacon grease to make bombs. They are right on target with the Federal Reserve. And then in my book, I put like, look at all these taxes that have come since.
Wow. Yeah.
Look at all the taxes,
Huh.
right? It's
Yeah.
like too much.
The new spirit really got to work.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the Bank of International Settlements and the Rothschilds and everybody's just like slurping up all of our money with their taxes because of Donald Duck. Oh, okay. So let's talk about Walt and Masonry, Freemasonry.
Ooh, okay.
So if I was to ask you, do you think Walt Disney was a Mason or not? What would you think?
I would say no.
Okay. Why would not?
Um, I'm just playing devil's advocate at the moment.
Well, he was
I
not.
would,
And this is something when people talk about Disney and like they want to, you know, spread some truth around about Disneyland and everything, and they say he was a 33rd degree Mason. Stop saying that because he was not a Mason. And I want you guys to get it right because I don't want you to look dumb because people
with
are going to go,
blonde.
yes, people are going to go Google that and they're going to say he wasn't a Mason. You're wrong about everything. So I'm going to tell you right now, I read all these books about his life. He was never a Freemason. His brother Roy was a 33rd degree Mason. And there is a Disneyland Masonic Club. There is a Club 33 that
Mhm.
is very hard to get into and expensive,
Yeah,
exclusive.
I've heard about that. Yeah.
Walt, however, was a D-Malay. So D-Malay is like Freemasonry for teen boys. And he was a charter member of the first D-Malay. I don't know if you can see that.
So is it like being an altar boy or
Kinda.
something?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's D-Malay, friend of Masons, but not actually a Mason himself. So there
That
you
is
have it.
very strange that he would like almost keep himself in a position that's for young boys.
That is weird.
Yeah.
And if he actually was a Mason, you would know like every Masonic temple that you visit, if you take a tour, they love to show you who their celebrities were that were members, you know, like Dr. Seuss or Dan Brown. They'll always have, if it's culturally relevant,
Mhm.
then they will promote that person if he was a Mason. So, but if you go to Disneyland, there is on Thunder Mountain Railroad, there's a little box And it says
Okay.
H Abyss working tools. And it just looks like a prop, but H Abyss, that's Hiram Abiff, the um, hero of Masonry. So there
Whoa.
are like Masonic Easter eggs all around Disneyland. And there's Club
Okay.
33 and there's the Masonic Club. And Roy was a Mason, but Disney was not a Mason.
I wonder why he never got into that.
Yeah.
He almost feels like Walt Disney kind of feels like that old boomer, like turbo old man boomer that's like right-winged and like um I'm a spy for the government and like not uh into like he was in and I could be completely wrong, but like it almost feels too transcendent like for Walt Disney because I felt like Walt Disney was like a very like man of the times, feet on the ground, like very material like driven.
Mm-hmm.
But I could be wrong.
He was definitely a character. And I think this is my speculation. And there's no like super smoking gun, but his involvement with the army and their propaganda, his
Hmm.
involvement with the FBI later on, um, I think somehow they used all of this to slip in the Project Monarch and things like that, the CIA involvement, because they had dirt on him.
Mm.
And he didn't want to lose his like facade of wholesome all-American. I mean, he won the most Academy Awards of anybody. Right. So he's a super popular icon. And it's almost as if he's one of those people that you can't say anything bad about. Like old ladies love him.
Hmm.
You know,
It's like Mr. Rogers or something.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. But he was a darker, more tortured soul than you would think. And I mean, not just like chain smoking and drinking all the time like he would do, but his sense of humor was pretty raunchy for such a wholesome family guy. Like he loved butts and he would always make jokes about butts and like tell animators this cartoon needs more butts.
Ooh, weird.
Yeah.
But
He was obsessed with one of his books in here says he was obsessed with them.
I did notice, they always like there's the one video we watched about how to create a Nazi.
Yeah. What do you think about that one? Education for Death. That's what it's called.
Very interesting, but he takes this image of a very, very large woman and is saying she's Germany and how Hitler seduces her or like takes her captive and he is now in charge of Germany. But in this film, it's this heavier woman.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole, I feel like the whole story plot around the woman is just around her butt and getting her butt. And like, it's just her butt the entire time. And I'm like, okay, got it. Like, this is a thing.
Yeah. Um, what I thought was interesting about that one was that they knew that if you separate a child from their mother, that you can basically control their thought process for the rest of their life. Like if you get the Nazi
Whoa.
comes in and says, take that child away from their mom. Do you remember that part?
I do, yeah.
And put him in the Nazi youth. Oh, I can't say Nazi.
I've said it like 3 times. Whoops.
So we had to pause it because we were saying too many bad words. And we're recalibrating our vocabulary.
Giving each other a pep talk,
We're talking about education for death and the making of an NAZI, and how if you separate the children from their mothers, that you can control them for the rest of their life. Was there anything else about that? Oh, didn't he have to like kill a bunny or something? or watch a bunny killed.
Yes, he had to watch a bunny be tortured or killed, and then the instructor asked him, this little boy, like, how did that feel? He's like, oh, I'm sad. So then they punish him, and he sees that he's now that been outcasted from the classroom, and all the other little NAZI boys are like, torture it more, hurt it more. And so then the little boy that's being punished looks at his instructor and is like, yeah, I think the same way, like hurt it more. And it was just so sad to see like, and this is Disney's propaganda to Americans on how NAZIs are formed and created. So
I
it's like,
know.
is this even true? Is this exaggerated? Like, what's going on
Well, like you
here?
said, this is another gaslighting because uh, the Americans use this techniques just as much, separating children from their families,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that they can control their thought processes for life. Education for Deaf. There's one called The Reluctant Dragon, which kind of reminded me of the creation of the League of Nations and Operation Paperclip. That one's like an hour long. And then there's Victory Through Air Power, which was all about bombs and dropping all kinds of
Fleet.
bombs and having like fleets of planes flying in the sky.
That was boring. Is that
Yeah,
one that you sent me? I was
yeah.
like, man, like it's brainwashing for sure, but I was just like, what are they trying to do? Like just bore us to death? And like, is this like, like when you see the hypnotizing circle and you're just staring at it and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
ooh, that actually on this documentary I was watching last night, I think they were doing that to people in one of the rides because there was like it was an inside ride and then they were like doing this hypnotic thing with
Mm-hmm.
lights
Mm-hmm.
and uh, yeah, I mean it's crazy to not admit that Disney is a well-oiled machine of brainwashing tools and techniques for decades now.
That makes me think of this thing that I just found in my bookshelves. How to
Oh
brain
yeah.
how to brainwash your friends and family.
Okay. Not how to influence your friends and
No.
family.
And it says you will need a copy of Fantasia in this article. So it goes scene by scene and it tells you, well, they're saying that the scientists would use Fantasia to program kids in Project Monarch. So they give them LSD, they put on Fantasia, and then it gives you the script that they say at what point. So you could probably find this if you Googled it. I think it's a Fritz Springmeier
Ooh,
thing.
I'm gonna look that up. I
Yeah.
do remember being a little girl and I had to go to daycare, and they literally would play Fantasia
Mm-hmm.
all the time,
Mm.
and I hated it so much because like it's all they ever played.
There's
Mm,
also some threads you can follow of Fritz Springmeier's, and one's called Disney's Satanic Bloodline. So, but since we don't exactly know if his mom was his mom, I don't know if that works or not, but something you guys can look at yourself. One last thing before I want to talk about subliminal messages, because you mentioned brainwashing, right?
mhm.
But I just found this. Bambi was actually a book written by a English porno guy named Felix Salton.
No.
Yes. And
It's so wholesome.
it's a Darwinian environmental protest against humanity and humans encroaching on nature. So that's
So
nice.
human bad, animal good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So when you like Google occult Disney or Disney secrets or Disney scandal or Disney whatever, if you're like searching, everyone's favorite thing is subliminal messages. They love those. And I kind of have a bunch that I put in my book, but off the top of my head, I can think of the Little Mermaid poster. Yes.
Ooh, tell me about it. Tell me what I'm doing. What did I do?
In the VHS cover for Little Mermaid, everybody was in an uproar because one of the spires of the underwater castle looked like a phallus. Looked exactly like a phallus. And I think they had to actually change it because too many people were complaining. So there's one. The other one I can think of is The Rescuers. There is a
Oh,
shot of a
yeah.
naked lady as they're like going down a hill and everything's going really fast. There's a naked lady in a window. What else? Oh, the dust in The Lion King when he flops over and the dusk goes into the night air. It spells out sex.
It sure does.
Yeah. Can you think of any more?
That was the one I was gonna. I mean, that's the most notable one.
How about in Little Mermaid when Eric is marrying Ursula in disguise? The little priest, he's wearing like a little white robe and he has a little pointer in his underneath his robe. He has a little BONER.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Did not know that. Nope.
Yep.
Okay.
So lots of them in Little Mermaid. What else? Oh, this one, Entangled, in the poster for Tangled. I don't know if you can see that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh,
they
I
kind of like to,
see. Yeah. SEX.
yeah. And so some people are like, it's just an animator's inside joke or something like that, right? It just made it in there somehow because maybe a disgruntled employee or someone who's
Mm.
just trying to troll you. But there's way too many people that work on, especially an animated movie,
Oh yeah.
that you can't just slip things in there like that. Like every scene has hundreds of different cells that they lay over each other and paint. And so things don't just get slipped in there by like one dude, right? Look at this Disney ride.
Oh my gosh.
Right? So, and subliminal messages are real. Like I can't remember the first, okay, 1919. They started putting in things that say eat popcorn or drink Coke or whatever in the movie.
Oh yeah. Mhm.
And the sales went up for whatever they were advertising.
Well,
So,
this feels like a subliminal thing. But there was like an interesting so like there's a ride at Disneyland called Toad's Wild Ride.
mhm.
And on the at in the ride itself, like you get in a collision and you end up in hell. And there's like little devils and demons. And I thought it was crazy because they even heat up that part, like the atmosphere of the room you're in to like emulate, like to make sure you understand you're in hell.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's how the ride ends. And it's like not even a part of the story. It's just how the ride decided to, be.
So, talking about rides, it's like every ride in the theme park, and we'll say this one in the next part for theme parks, but a theme park is a military industrial complex advertising thing. Like whenever you go on a ride, you'll notice that it's sponsored by a different company. So next time you go to Disneyland or Disney World, if you want to, just look at who is sponsoring what rides. It's oil companies, it's energy companies, it's technology, Siemens, uh,
Mm.
that was an NAZI company that now sponsors the giant Epcot ball. So each
Oh, yeah.
ride has a program that the sponsor wants to be programmed into you. So they give you a little bit of spook, they give you a little trauma, they give you a little adrenaline or whatever. And then they give you the spiel. Like, I remember going to Epcot and we're riding around like the Norway exhibit, and they're talking about offshore drilling and showing us offshore drilling rigs and saying how much we depend on fossil fuels and like how good all of this is. Like, it's literally just a commercial
Yeah. Wow.
for
Yeah.
military industrial complex companies.
An in-person experience to brainwash you
Yes.
at a deep, deep, deep level.
Yes.
You haven't been, I went to Disney World when my daughter was 5. So it was a minute ago, but yeah.
So Disney is, I would say, the biggest influence on pop culture in the world.
Well, Nickelodeon, it's like that. I grew up watching Nickelodeon, Nick at Night, like I mean, literally that's all I watched when I was growing up. So, and Nickelodeon is owned by Disney, right? Am I
I
making
don't
that up?
know.
I'm gonna look that up because I could be making that up.
Okay, so I do have a thing about Nickelodeon here, but I mean, a Nickelodeon was a peep show back in the day. Did you know that?
No.
So
What do you mean by that?
it was a little thing that you go and put your nickel in and you can see ladies dancing or,
Oh, no way.
yeah. So that's exactly where that came from. PORN.
Okay, so it says Nickelodeon is owned by Viacom International as of 2014, whereas Disney is owned by Walt Disney Company, which is a competitor.
Okay. Probably not for long.
Walt Disney owns ABC, ESPN, A&E, and Disney channels. Okay, well.
So yeah, the pictograph, the talkies, the movies, all of this is like turn of the century, early 1900s, and Nickelodeons were for dirty pictures. And now they are famous for sliming children.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
Yeah.
Legends of the Fall. Was that it? Legends of the Temple. I don't know. There was a game show and
I remember that.
I wanted to be on that show so bad.
Dude, I wanted to be on Double Dare so bad. Like,
Oh,
I thought Mark Summers was the coolest grown up.
oh yeah.
Remember
And
that?
my first little girl crush ever was on a character on Are You Afraid of the Dark? Like
Okay.
one of the the guys and the girls that sit around the campfire.
Mhm.
I was like, wow, he's so cute. Yeah.
I watched that. And I watched Doug
Oh yeah, Doug.
and
Ren and
Rugrats,
Stimpy.
Ren and Stimpy. If you look at Ren and Stimpy now,
Oh, it's so bad.
it is. How did
So
that
bad.
even get on a kid's programming?
Don't
Well,
know,
we know
man.
how.
That's so bad.
So yeah, what is the Nickelodeon goo? I don't think it's very good. I did write down a couple names. So Disney hires SEX predators
Yep. They
right
sure
out
do.
of the gate. Brian Peck is one of them. He worked for Disney and Nickelodeon. Victor Salva is another one, and Joshua Workman. So that's just 3 like registered SEX offenders that get jobs working with children.
Mm-hmm.
Not just writing, but like on set with them and everything.
Which I don't know if you want to get into what's happening in today's world with all of that, but like it just feels like it just feels like this is par for the course. You know, it's like what's happening in the news today with it, with its background and its leniency and its kind of like turn a blind eye. Like even with one of those, there was a man found on a Disney cruise ship who was caught with an 11-year-old girl. And when a security officer protested against like failing to arrest him on the ship, but they waited till it docked for whatever reason, Disney's authorities told that person to keep their mouth shut, like quote unquote. And it's just like, you know, this is.
I think I read that, and like they caught him before they set sail, and then they let him stay so he wouldn't get arrested in America, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's, yeah.
So all of this is just like Chicken Little. I have this chapter called Psychology Inc.
Oh, you found the font and everything. Great.
Yeah. And it's just amazing when you start to follow all of the threads and how Disney is interconnected with the FBI, the CIA, the Army. Well, oh, because when he was in the Army in World War I, he had to lie about his age to sign up. And his job was as a driver, and he would go around and pick up helmets that had like bullet holes in them and sell them as memorabilia. And if he didn't have enough NAZI memorabilia, he would just like make fake things to sell people. So right there, he's like a teenager, 18, 19, and he's already showing that he has no problem lying to people and selling them fake things, you know?
Yeah, I read in the book, like, he was like well known to be just like a strict businessman. Business came first, like the company came first. It didn't matter like what that looked like. Like it was just, he was a business guy. And so basically like whatever sells or whatever we need to do, keep the business going and growing. Whatever collaborations we have to make, like, and that I feel like with what's happening with the corporation of Disney right now and like what they're pushing with the modern day agenda with the new terms and you know, last year there was a critical race theory diversity program that was taught to all their employees, and it's just, they are leading I feel like they're the leaders of corporations. Mm-hmm. And like you said, like you showed that picture and like all these corporations are in this. So it's kind of like, it just like trickles down and they set the bar.
It's the largest multimedia conglomerate ever. And
I think what's being said right now, like the vocalization and almost like the pridefulness and the assertiveness of like the producers and the corporate president. Like I wrote down that the executive producer, LaToya Ravano, laid out Disney's ideology in blunt terms. And she said that her team was implementing a not at all secret GAY agenda. Mm-hmm. It's like, I mean, okay, well, if they're going to do that, and then we're going to have more than 50% characters and storylines, and this is all rolling out this week, like, okay, well, they're setting the bar here, and they're getting all this support. They're also getting a lot of pushback, but like, what's that bill that they're passing that has like that?
Oh, don't say GAY.
Yeah.
Florida? Yeah. And
it's driving me crazy because the people reciting that mantra in the world don't even know what they're saying. It's just like they've heard, it's another parrot, you know, saying of like, BLM or I mean, there's a thousand of them.
There's a name for this, and I wish I could remember it, but it's basically small groups using small groups of elite, like mega billionaires and things like the controllers using small disenfranchised groups to get rid of like the middle class. So like rich people say they are on the side of the poor or the disenfranchised or whoever the group is, but they're just using that group to get at the middle class. So I feel sorry for if you're GAY or, you know, BLM, you are being exploited. You're being told how to feel about yourself and who the enemy is, just like we were talking about last time with the rat learning, how they shock the rats, but the rat doesn't know that it's coming from underneath and they attack other rats.
It's such a good analogy. Yeah. I was actually having this discussion with my boyfriend and his cousin, and they were like, you know, the worst demographic of all of this. And I was like, what? And they're like, white women, like white women. And, you know, they were kind of kidding, but at the same time, it's like the most vocal voices right now are white, like middle-aged women coming out, like the two names that I just told you that were at Disney, like promoting this agenda and like, and not to say like there is a stereotype, you know, the Karen. The Karen's loud and she's aggressive but that stereotype is being like blended or bled over into the other side, like the other flip side of the coin. They have their Karens, but they're not being recognized as a Karen. They're just being recognized as like a leader or as they're leading the way. They're being they're spearheading the, you know, the great utopia of like freedom of speech and be whatever you want to be.
I think also they are using their goodwills against them because people are sensitive to injustice, especially women.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's why we get the most sensitive and vocal about it.
And I'll say this again on another show because I want to get it just right, but basically I'm not here to invalidate someone's grievance as pertaining to, you know, BLM or what any kind of group. You are being traumatized. You are being tortured. You are being like, this is what I'm saying. You are under this oppression. So I'm never going to tell you that you're not, but the shock is not coming from who you think it's coming from.
It's a very good point.
Yeah.
Very good point. Because someone's personal experience is their personal experience. And I do think it's important that we meet them there and not, like you said, not invalidate that, but validate that and say, okay, yeah, like you have had X, Y, and Z done to you. And this is your outlook and your lens of the world today. Like, okay, I'm going to meet you there. I want to be able to try to meet you there and see how we can make this better for you and for me and for them and for everyone. But at the same time, like you said, the problems are not coming from where you think the problems are coming from. Like the shock is not coming from the person across the street.
Yeah.
That might have a different position than you.
Right. And I really want to flesh this out when we do a show about feminism.
Yeah, that's a sensitive one.
Yeah. So we'll just lose all our friends and family over that show. But
I'm going to wear black because I'll just go ahead and start mourning the death of my social life.
Yeah. But exactly. I think they put in straw man enemies for you to rail against so you don't notice who's actually oppressing you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And just the overwhelming evidence of things like monarch programming in Disney cartoons, especially in the girls like Hannah Montana, Britney Spears, um, who else? Christina Aguilera, just all of the Mouseketeers and their
Mhm.
careers. Maybe we can do a show maybe about like pop stars
Yeah, I
and
mean, like that Paris Hilton story is fascinating.
oh yeah,
Um,
and
so
how they grew up and how all of this symbolism, this Disney symbolism is put on them, the monarch symbolism, and then they go and have these nervous breakdowns, and that's for a reason, right? It's because
yeah, and
they're
as little kids, they are exposed to traumatic, um, experiences that would place you in a place of fear of others, of the elite. Like,
mhm.
I don't want to upset them. I'm going to stay within my boundaries and my lines, and I'm going to play this character that they've created for me.
So Disney is all about like fantasy, imagination, and they even have a word that they use called Imagineering,
Mm.
as like an engineer for the imagination. And I was just
Sounds like Sadhguru's inner engineering book. Have you heard of that one?
no, but it sounds like it could be like that.
Yeah.
So let me pull it up. I was just listening to this video. Where's it at?
Well, I could talk about something right now
Go
and
ahead.
take up air. Well, I just want to talk about how Disney was a snitch. That's my favorite about this whole thing. I don't know how tall he was. I don't know what his bodily features look like. But because he's a snitch, he already lost a couple of points. Um, let's see. What else do I have? I have that he died in 1966. Um, did you know that Disney is in a no-fly zone? We'll talk about that probably when we do the theme park episode. Um, and then this is really interesting too. They're in that documentary on Prime that I saw, like again, like the quality of this documentary was, but he interviews these women who are they're social clubs, but they're also like gangs of Disney. And like this is a real thing. Like you can go and you can join this social club and you have to apply to be in certain social clubs. And then you get the outfits and you go to Disneyland with your club, your gang. And there's different gangs that don't like each other. And it's just like they get dressed up and then they go together and they hang out in different sections of the park. And
Oh, really? Like
yeah, and
Lilo,
this
I'm in Lilo and Stitch gang and you're in the Dumbo gang or something.
yeah, like these groups of girls, there was like five of them and they were dressed up like the is it Betty Page? Is that her name?
Hmm.
Like the black hair with like the doo-wop kind of like vibe and like the um
Pinup girl.
pinup girl kind
Yeah.
of like look. And then they had like matching jean jackets and they were just like hanging out by the fountain in the middle of the park. Like, what is happening right now?
Okay, so I found it. So it's Father Spiridon Bailey on YouTube, and he had a really good message about fantasy and
Ooh.
what Disney has Fantasyland, but fantasy is not a place where you want to hang out as an Orthodox Christian. So
Mm.
they talk very negatively about, well, what he's talking about is like dissociation, like
It is.
retreating and making up a fantasy world. Um, so
I think it's perpetuating the inability to see life as it is presented to you.
mhm.
So, like you
And
said,
yeah, this video was really good. It's called Cannabis and Christianity. Um,
oh, okay.
And so basically what that does is put you in a state of imagination and fantasy, and it's a very unsobering state to be in, and is not a very good or orthodox way to be. So that's something that you want to.
Are you telling me I can't do my mushrooms now?
Mushrooms. No, you cannot.
I kid, I kid.
No more psychedelics. I don't know exactly like what I would say about the other flowers. Probably in the ballpark of like drinking, or things that you could overindulge in, so you need to fast from them. Use it for medicinal reasons, and under the guidance of spiritual leaders, and knowing that we are supposed to be as sober as much as we can. Doesn't mean we can't let loose sometimes and party and drink and do things like that, but for the most part we are called to not be living in fantasy.
Yeah.
So.
I think that is I think that is why I'm so drawn to kind of like teachers like Jordan Peterson, and even like he's kind of a workout guy named David Goggins that's just like, he's like this hardo on working out. But I think I'm drawn to people like that because they're like, the only way to, I think control is a delusion too, but the only way to like really live the best version of yourself is to look at your surroundings and say, okay, this is where I am. And like, how do I lead? How do we get on this? Like,
Fantasyland.
Yeah, Fantasyland. It's just like, how do you grow, evolve, ascend into the brightness of light that is of Christ, when you are scared to look at your current reality? I think that's what I'm trying to say.
And a lot of people fall when they are more into fantasy than reality. I mean, that's where like adultery starts, and lots of different temptations are from your imagination, and they become reality when you act on them. So interesting stuff. The last thing I wanted to talk about tonight was princess programming. And that was something I wrote about in part 2. And it was the era of maybe like 2005 to 2015. Everything for a girl that you could buy was pink. You couldn't go to a toy store without the whole entire girl section being about tiaras, being about princesses, being about tutus, wands. And then the boys was very stark contrast with their warrior programming.
Trucks,
Guns, lasers, just everything military. Now it's getting to be a different thing because they're merging the genders together. But back then it was super divided. And I think I'm probably the first person who ever like came up with that quip princess programming.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
But it is a gateway to narcissism, in that, the princess, there can only be one princess, right? At a time. And I'm thinking of like My Super Sweet 16, or those kind of shows that really showed you how, when you extend this like brat logic, brats.
Yeah.
How you can just like become unhinged.
Brats are like literally drag dolls. Yeah, it's just teaching girl. I felt like that was a major programming psyop that was just
It
like
was.
thrown onto, yeah, those were so triggering to me. And I was in high school when those came out, and I was like, something's up here. Like, I
Mhm.
don't like this at all.
And like Rats, Monster High.
Yeah.
So now there's a shift that I've seen that we are focusing more on villains and they're like being more sympathetic to the villains and their origin stories in Disney.
So
Like,
like the Joker.
yes, Joker,
Oh,
Cruella.
uh-huh.
Who else had a villain origin story? Maleficent.
Yeah.
They're doing an Ursula one, I think.
Oh, no way.
Wicked. That's not Disney, it's MGM, but still the same.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting the picture from the side of the villain now instead of the hero. So
Mm-hmm.
it's sliding towards being very sympathetic to the dark side. What do you think about that?
I think that, well, it makes sense to push a certain agenda of this whole idea of like duality. You know, if
Yes.
something's good, just the flip side of that is going to be the bad. And we have to integrate the two in order to be a whole person. And so I can see that that's probably the agenda. You know, there's this image that I remember being lost to the new age world and like, oh, I get it. But it was like a split screen, and like half the image is Jesus and then half of it is like Satan. And it's like, when, it's a very, I think it was like a Gnostic way of looking at the inversion of Christ or the inversion of Lucifer.
Mm-hmm.
And it confused me because I didn't have the foundation I needed to really interpret this image. But when I see this playing out in today's world of like, oh, well, we must have sympathy on Lucifer because he's the fallen angel, and that's a whole, Lucifer is really the light of the world. So I can just see that this is a way to install confusion into just people that are already, they don't have a foundation of, um, there's a Shakespeare quote that really tripped me up when I was younger or earlier in my life, and I was sitting in a catechism class, and it dawned on me. I don't know if I understand the realization of what it means, but I feel like I'm getting closer than where I was. But it's Shakespeare, and he says, "There is no right or wrong, but thinking makes it so." And so I was like, oh, okay. Well, there isn't right. Back in the day, I was like, there isn't right or wrong. You can do whatever you want because there's no right or wrong. And there's a Rumi poem about, beyond the fields of right or wrong. I'll meet you there. I'm paraphrasing. But I was sitting in a class, and and I actually brought that quote up, and I thought, well, if you're awakened in your heart, it's about the heart being awakened to realize what right or wrong is. It's almost like that the knowledge has to be awakened inside of you before you can discern what's going to be leading someone down a path of righteousness, right living, or a path that's going to lead to more delusion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really just the two paths. This is delusion path, or this is right thinking, or right the right way, or the right living. And that's controversial as well, just even saying something like that.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, this is the checkerboard floor of the Masons. The duality, black and white, and the magician transcends that, or walks above right and wrong, like you're
Mm,
saying.
yeah.
So I think the bringing out all of these villains and introducing them as good characters or misunderstood, because all of this stuff is going to come out. sooner or later. It's coming out now, and I'm glad that Disney is tanking right now. But they are introducing kids to the idea that maybe bad guys aren't that bad.
Right. They're just misunderstood.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, very dangerous way of thinking, especially since, hundreds of people that are connected to Disney are getting arrested. And there's multiple sting operations set up specifically to catch these people. And they're always around children, and they're always working at theme parks. They are working in Hollywood. I'm thinking of Weinstein.
Yeah. I was just studying the psychology of evil, and it's actually a form of study in psychology, but people won't touch it anymore because it's spiritual and it's not tangible. Like we can't give someone a test and then it's qualitative, not quantitative. And so, but there is this study because psychologists in the past and even today recognize that there's a nature within some human beings that is evil, and they will manipulate, and they will do bad things to good people. Because that's how they're wired. But it's a super controversial field of study. And I think it's one that, I have a bunch of friends in the Orthodox community now that are therapists. And this has been a topic of conversation with us of like, have you heard of this? And like, what do you think about this? And it's finally starting to like reemerge itself because I think it's been so suppressed. And this idea of like, nothing's evil has been pushed, this agenda, and it's just like, that's not true.
I'm thinking of, the dark triad: narcissism, sociopaths, and psychopaths. Like, those are real, quantifiable personality disorders that we're now just starting to understand as a society. And I'm so glad that, you can't even go on YouTube without seeing a narcissism video anymore, right?
Yeah, it's a buzzword now.
Like, everyone's ex is a narcissist, which they
Everyone.
probably are, because I think that way of thinking is how demons operate. And if you're not really working on taming your passions and going to confession and working on yourself and liturgy and purging yourself of sin and everything, you are under the influence of demons. And that's most people in the world. And so, I know something happens to people in childhood to hurt their frontal lobe and make them this way, but it's something that can only be reversed inside the church. And outside the church, I don't think those people have any hope whatsoever. So,
yeah, I definitely think there has to be an awakening of the heart. And that's a process.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed this introduction to Disney and the history of Walt Disney himself. Was there anything else that you wanted to add? The life of old Walt and Roy, and there's just so many little anecdotes that go into the making of this person who is now larger than life.
Yeah, it's taken on a whole, like a spirit within itself. Like, I think we could spend an entire episode on just the Celebration subdivision, where you could buy into this community and live this fantasy life with these fantasy neighbors and this fantasy community.
Yes. Good point. Great point.
Crazy.
So next time it's all about, not next week, but next time we talk about Disney, it's all about theme parks and the Disney lifestyle.
Which I love theme parks. I really do.
I always have fun when we go because I feel like we're on a secret mission, like we're undercover getting intel on taking pictures and seeing what's going on in there. So
yeah,
we have fun in a subversive way when we go. So thank you all for coming. Hope you learned something, and I hope you will start to hopefully purge yourself a little bit of the fantasy and the Disneyfication of your brain. So thank you all and good night.